Two drivers, same car, same route, same gas station, same tank of gas at the start of every week. By Friday afternoon, driver A has 7% less fuel left than driver B every single week. No mechanical differences, no extra miles. The only thing separating their fuel bills is what happens in the first 3 seconds after a traffic light turns green. That difference, compounded over a full year of commuting, is roughly $600. Gone. Not from a leak, not from a mechanical failure, not from bad gas, from a habit so automatic that neither driver thinks about it for even a second. One of them accelerates smoothly, the other one doesn't, and their engines respond to that difference in a way that most drivers have never had explained to them. Here's what I mean. Your car's engine doesn't decide how much fuel to burn based on how fast you want to go. It decides based on load, how hard you're asking it to work at any given moment. And the computer that manages fuel injection, the ECU, runs what's called a fuel map, a table that matches every combination of engine load and RPM to a specific air-fuel ratio. That ratio determines how efficiently the combustion event burns. At light to moderate load, cruising, gentle acceleration, steady highway speed, the ECU targets what's called the stoichiometric ratio, 14.7 parts air to 1 part fuel. At that ratio, the engine burns the maximum energy out of every molecule of gasoline. Efficiency is at its peak. When load demand jumps, when you press the accelerator past a certain threshold, the ECU shifts strategy. It stops targeting efficiency and starts targeting power. The air-fuel ratio drops to 11 or 12 to 1. Richer mixture, more fuel per combustion event, more torque output, and significantly worse fuel economy. This isn't a flaw, it's by design. The engine needs that enrichment to produce peak power without detonation. But here's what matters for your wallet. That enrichment activates the moment the throttle position sensor, the TPS, reads above roughly 70 to 75% of full throttle opening. It's not a gradual curve, it's closer to a switch, below 70%, efficient mode, above 70%. Power mode, full enrichment, fuel economy drops off a cliff. Every time you leave a traffic light with your foot down, you are crossing that threshold. Every time. And I'll tell you exactly what that threshold looks like from the inside of the ECU in the next section, including one detail about modern GDI engines that makes this problem significantly worse than it was 10 years ago. Before that, there's a second habit that works in combination with aggressive acceleration to double the damage. It involves the brake pedal, and most drivers do both things automatically, without ever thinking about them as connected. We'll get there. Subscribe if this is the kind of information you want more of, and leave a comment with what you're driving. I want to know how many of you are dealing with city traffic every day. Here's what the 70% threshold actually looks like in practice, and I want you to think about this the next time you're at a stoplight. The throttle position sensor on your car reads from 0% minus foot completely off the pedal to 100% minus pedal flat to the floor. Most normal urban driving happens between 10% and 40%. Gentle acceleration, steady state cruising, rolling through a parking lot. In that range, the ECU stays in its efficient operating window. The fuel map it's working from is optimized for economy. You're getting close to whatever the EPA rating promises for your vehicle. The moment you push past 70%, which on most cars happens well before the pedal feels like it's near the floor, the ECU's fuel strategy changes. It's not a gradual transition. The enrichment activates sharply. In some calibrations, particularly on turbocharged engines where boost is involved, the ECU can go from stoichiometric to a rich mixture of 11.5 to 1 almost instantly, and it stays there for the entire duration of that throttle input. What this means at a traffic light: if you put your foot down hard to get up to speed quickly, the ECU runs in power enrichment mode for most of that acceleration event. If you accelerate gently to the same speed over a longer time, the ECU stays in its efficient zone through almost all of it. You arrive at the same speed. You cover the same distance. One of those trips cost you 3 times the fuel of the other. Now multiply that by 25 to 35 acceleration events in a typical urban commute. That's conservative. City drivers in heavy traffic can hit that number before 9 a.m. The Silverado case makes this concrete. A 2018 Chevy Silverado 1500 with the 5.3-liter V8. Same owner, 2 different work contexts over 2 years. First year, 22-mile commute through city streets, stop and go, signals every quarter mile. Real-world average, 12.4 mpg. Second year, job change 28-mile commute but mostly suburban highway with 3 lights total. Real-world average, 18.1 mpg. The instinct is to say, of course, highway is always more efficient. But that's not the whole story. The Silverado's EPA city rating is 15 mpg. The highway rating is 20. This owner was getting 2.6 mpg below the city rating in his urban suburban commute, not because of traffic, but because of how he drove through it. He sat in the same traffic as everyone else, but between stops, he accelerated hard, every time, out of habit. The suburban commute was longer in miles and in time, but he averaged 18 mpg because the acceleration events were few, gentle, and spread far apart. He wasn't trying to drive economically, he just naturally decelerated and accelerated more gradually on suburban roads where there's room and nobody's next to you at every light. Now I want to explain the GDI factor, because this changes the numbers for a large portion of cars on the road right now. GDI stands for gasoline direct injection. It's the fuel system in the majority of new vehicles sold in the last decade. Almost everything with a turbocharged engine, and many naturally aspirated engines as well. In a GDI engine, fuel is injected directly into the combustion chamber at extremely high pressure, rather than into the intake port. The consequence that nobody talks about, because the fuel doesn't pass over the intake valves in a GDI engine, those valves don't get washed by fuel, and carbon builds up on them over time. To manage combustion temperature in high-load situations, GDI calibrations tend to run richer enrichment than equivalent port-injected engines. More fuel, longer duration, during high-throttle events. The enrichment is doing double duty, generating power and managing heat. That means every aggressive acceleration in a GDI engine costs more fuel than the same maneuver in a port-injected engine of equivalent displacement. And there are a lot of GDI engines in a lot of garages right now. I'll finish with the math on what all of this adds up to annually, and with the second habit that doubles the damage. That's next. Here's the second habit, and it's inseparable from the first. Every time you brake hard, you're destroying kinetic energy. Momentum that your engine burned fuel to create, momentum that took combustion events, pistons, and crankshaft rotation to build, disappears as heat through your brake rotors. The brake doesn't save that energy. It doesn't store it. It converts it to heat and releases it into the air. Gone. This matters because of how aggressive acceleration and aggressive braking work together. A driver who accelerates hard gets up to speed quickly, burning fuel at high enrichment rates the entire time. Then a few hundred feet later, a car turns in front of them, a light changes, traffic slows, and they brake hard. All that kinetic energy, paid for in fuel at power enrichment rates, evaporates through the brakes in 3 seconds. Then the light turns green, and they do it again. A driver doing this through 30 stop-and-go cycles in a morning commute is essentially buying fuel to heat their brake pads. The kinetic energy never gets used productively. It's created and destroyed, over and over, at maximum cost each time it's created. The Camry case shows what happens when one of these habits changes. 2020 Toyota Camry 2.5-liter, naturally aspirated. Owner commuted 40 miles daily through suburban city traffic. His calculated real-world MPG was consistently 22.7, about 19% below the EPA city rating of 28 mpg. He wasn't driving aggressively by his own assessment, he just drove normally. I suggested one change. The 50% rule. Never use more than half the accelerator travel when pulling away from a stop or accelerating to highway speed. That's it. No other adjustments. Same route, same traffic, same car. After 30 days, his calculated MPG had risen to 26.1, a 15% improvement in fuel economy without touching the engine, without changing the oil, without adjusting tire pressure or anything else. Just a different relationship with the right pedal. The math over 12 months. At his daily mileage, that 15% improvement equated to about $67 fewer dollars spent on gas every month, $804 per year, on a car that was already being maintained correctly and running perfectly. The money wasn't coming from fixing something broken. It was coming from stopping a waste that had no obvious symptoms. Now, the combined effect. A driver who accelerates aggressively and brakes aggressively, doing both habits all day in urban traffic. The fuel penalty is not additive, it's multiplicative. The aggressive acceleration burns fuel at enrichment rates. The hard braking wastes the kinetic energy that fuel created. The next aggressive acceleration burns enrichment rate fuel again to rebuild that energy. The cycle repeats. Real-world data from fuel economy studies comparing smooth drivers versus drivers in identical vehicles on identical routes consistently shows a 20 to 30% difference in fuel consumption at average U.S. fuel prices and average commute distances. That gap runs $700 to $1,200 per year. For drivers in larger vehicles, trucks, SUVs, the absolute dollar figure is higher because they're burning more fuel per mile to begin with, so the percentage gap costs more. The fix is not about driving slowly. The 50% rule doesn't mean slow. The Camry owner arrived at work at exactly the same time. He just used less of the pedal getting there, which kept the ECU in its efficient zone, and he looked further ahead in traffic, so he could coast to stops instead of braking late. Coasting to a stop uses zero fuel. Modern fuel-injected engines cut injection entirely during deceleration with the throttle closed and the car in gear. The engine is being spun by the wheels, not by combustion. Every foot you coast before a stop is a foot where the engine burns nothing. Every foot you accelerate past 70% throttle is a foot where it burns at maximum rate. Driver A and driver B from the beginning of this video. They're the same person, in two different phases of understanding what's happening inside the car. The only thing that changed was the information. Now you have it too. If you want more of this, fuel economics, engine behavior, the physics of what your car is actually doing while you drive, subscribe to the channel. We're here every week. No filler.